Hello.
Good evening. You are live with Courtside with Lawman.
And Carmen B.
Again, we are here tonight to talk to you about the law, about criminal law, and how it can affect you. We would like to remind you that our answering of your questions, be it in the chat, via email, or you calling into the show, does not establish an attorney-client relationship with yourself and Lawman or myself. However, the purpose of this is to provide education and information to the community about the criminal justice system and how it can impact you, as well as your constitutional rights.
Yes. So we're back again. I think this is episode 6.
I believe
like
that
that.
it is.
All right. And I think we're going to touch on there's a case that goes to the Supreme Court, or it did, I think, for oral argument recently regarding allowing police to be in a different function, a community caretaking function, but going in your home and taking your guns, basically, if they feel that it benefits the community. The uniqueness about it is that Biden's administration has suggested that the Supreme Court allow this kind of behavior. And if they do, then it clearly steps in the way of the Fourth Amendment right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, because this case dictates how police can come up with pretty much a reason to come in and take your guns and for caretaking purposes, but you're not mentally insane. You're not a criminal in terms of you had a crime that prohibits you from owning a weapon, and it doesn't dictate that you performed any kind of behavior necessarily that causes them to be taken from you. So it's an interesting concept.
And I would just remind viewers that the phone number, if you would like to call in with a question, is 916-384-8204. Again, 916-384-8204. I think that this case is interesting in light of the events of the last
last
couple of weeks or so, with the shooting that happened in Georgia, and then the latest shooting that happened in Colorado.
Yeah. And the almost shooting, apparently, somewhere they found a guy going into some place and he was loaded with guns and things like that.
Are you talking about the guy that was outside of the vice presidential home?
Was it that? Is that where he was?
Yes, there was a guy that was found outside of the vice presidential residence. The vice president and her family had not moved into their residence yet, but he was there and was pretty heavily armed with no real purpose for being at that location and with the amount of weaponry that he had with him.
Right. And we've seen this in the past. I mean, go from Vegas to the school shootings, all over, where people have weapons and they have them legally. And some of these things, individuals have mental issues, which does today, if you have mental issues and you are going through them at the time, they can come in and confiscate your guns.
They can if somebody has notified them and they are aware of you having those issues, but there is a process for that, whereby you actually receive a court hearing regarding whether or not they can take your firearms. I would note that I am an advocate for responsible gun ownership. And every time one of these events happens, there's always this outcry for banning weapons and firearms reform, and that the citizens don't need certain types of weapons. But that is not going to fix the issue with someone who has mental issues and who decides to get a firearm, whether it is legally or illegally, to commit these types of crimes. So I think that there are other discussions that we need to be having besides just the discussion about let's take away guns from citizens.
Right. And I mean, you know, the Second Amendment, of course, people believe that that is what authorizes individual citizens to have weaponry, guns, and things like that. There are no limits necessarily on how many you can buy, right? And I mean, it's just a matter of passing a background check.
Well, in California, there are certain weapons that you are already prohibited by California law from owning, but there are other states that where those weapons can still be purchased by the citizens that reside in those states.
You're talking about the AR, the assault weapons, basically, yeah.
Yes.
And they're trying to, I guess there are always legislation always coming out on how to limit them from being rendered into automatic weapons, the amount of
the ammunition. The what they call the high volume gun magazines.
So there's regulation always everywhere, but I guess, you know, I'll jump to the other side and I'll say, well, let's see, to protect your home, you don't need an assault weapon. You don't need rounds. So why carry around assault weapons? Why allow citizens to have them when they would do more damage than good?
Well, I don't know that citizens should be carrying around assault weapons, but the Second Amendment guarantees me a right to possess firearms, and I want to be able to do that. One of the reasons for having the citizens be able to have firearms is in case there is a revolution. So you may not just be the issue of you're protecting just your home from a burglar or someone who would come in and do harm to you or your family. It could come down to the point where you have to protect your home against insurgents. For example, the people that we saw on, what was that, January 6th at the Capitol? What if you had to protect your home from those people? What if those people decided they were going to come into a neighborhood and rid that neighborhood of people that they felt to be undesirable?
Well,
in that instance, I'm going to want my assault weapon. Now I'm in California, so I can't have one.
Well, you can have one, but
well, you cannot legally have one unless I believe that if you the law is if you owned it prior to the time that they banned it, then but you have to register it. It has to be registered with the state, which brings up another particular issue, and that's been in the news, and that is that there have been problems with the California registry system. So there are people who legally have their weapons prior to the date of the ban, but they've had problems being able to utilize the system in order to register those weapons.
I want to go back to the well-armed militia, okay, and the Second Amendment, and the individuals who are the insurgents, you would say, who would be coming, right? I guess what we're saying and what it means is that there would be a faction of individuals who will be overthrowing the government or overthrowing law and order in order to accomplish what? Power of the nation? I mean,
well, we don't know. What was the plan of the people who attacked the Capitol?
Well,
I mean, they had all sorts of plans. My understanding was that one of the guys that I think has been referred to in the media as the zip tie guy. Why does he have zip ties? Zip ties are used by usually law enforcement, or when you want to, other than for some purpose in securing something, if you have them, the use for them with humans is so that you don't have to use handcuffs. You can zip tie people's hands or feet.
Right. Now, which brings me to the issue of circumstantial evidence. You mentioned they go in with zip ties. A lot of people we heard are chanting to hang this person and do something to this person. Now, you can view those as terrorist threats. I mean, those are threats to do something, intent to kill even, and which would be an attempted murder. There's several crimes. The vandalism of the place and ransacking it alone
That is true. I see a few comments in the chat from Moran Tactical. In California, you're limited to one gun purchase per 30 days. I do believe that that is accurate.
Trying to get 12 in a year. Unless I have my son buying them too, then I get 24.
That would be true. That would be true.
My baby can buy one too? If I got a baby, you think I can get?
No, you can't get one for your baby. I believe that you have to be 21 years old in order to purchase a firearm.
All right. Darn. But hey, you can see you can load up on weapons very quickly.
You can if you want to.
And these insurgents, I mean, I go back to, do you call it assault on peace officers, right? Attempted murder on peace officers?
Well, to my knowledge, none of the people who attacked the Capitol have been charged with attempted murder. I'm not even aware if any have been actually charged with terrorist threats
or assaults. Even. I mean, I would guess no. I think there were 6 people or something.
A very small number of the people who actually went in.
It wasn't a murder. They would just say you assaulted the officer, and he eventually died. Yes. Now, out on the street, if you hit me in the head. And I die 5 days later, it's a murder charge. Okay, so yeah.
And this is unfortunate, but we have to deal with reality. We saw the way that those insurgents, those people attacking the Capitol and wreaking havoc and sending our lawmakers running scared for their lives were treated very differently than the Black Lives Matters protesters, right?
They were escorted off the campus, so to speak.
Very gently, and very few were arrested the day that this happened.
That's right. And no rubber bullets in the crowds, no.
I think there was one woman that I saw a video of who was crying that she had been pepper sprayed, and we later discovered that she had rubbed an onion in her eyes, or that nothing had actually even happened to her.
I think a few cops got pepper sprayed, so I mean,
because some of the insurgents had bear spray with them. So to bring it back to the case law that you were talking, or the case that's being argued before the Supreme Court, the Biden administration, it's my understanding, is actually urging or arguing that law enforcement should be able to go inside of homes and take guns. Do you know under what specific circumstances they were indicating that that would occur?
Yes, and that's why I'm going to pull up the article too, if I can, just so we have it. It is the community caretaking function of the Fourth Amendment. Now, history. The community caretaking function is generally used for automobiles and that are left at the scene of a crime, that are left in an accident, that are left in a dangerous location, a place, and the officers have to confiscate the car, take it in. They can do an inventory search of the car if they need to, but that's the community caretaking function, is when they take a car, they inventory it, and then they find contraband or something in the car. It has been generally used for automobiles, but now they want to expand it to homes, to houses. So if something is going on at your house, the officers are there, they're taking care of things. The community caretaking function could say, well, you know what? Although we came here and there was a little argument and nobody's going to jail, you know what? We probably should take all the guns you guys have. Why don't we just take them all out the house for safekeeping? So it pretty much, before, there's no, let's think the rules, right? Okay, you're going to need to detain me, right? You're going to need some probable cause to search me, right? You're going to need some reason to come into my home. And usually that's a warrant, okay? So,
but I think that the Biden administration, I believe there are 9 other states as well,
attorney generals,
yes, that are joining in this request, are arguing that law enforcement should be able to do those kinds of gun confiscations without a warrant.
Yeah, which it sounds like a problem. I mean, you got to figure the gun lobby would be all over this. I mean, it's the problem I had with the case is the facts of the case itself. It all started with an older couple that gets into an argument. And they get into an argument probably 3 or 4 times over the night, so to speak, to where the husband brings in, he goes and gets a weapon, he puts it on the table, and he says, well, you know what? You ought to just shoot me, put me out of my misery, something like that. They get into another argument about that, and she stays at a hotel for the night. He stays at the house. When in the morning, she can't get in touch with him because either he's asleep, don't want to answer the phone or something, she calls the cops to go do a welfare check at the home. Now, welfare checks, what do they usually use for? Right? And to go and just, are you okay, ma'am? Somebody hasn't seen you in 2 days or 3 days, so we're just checking on you. You know, they don't necessarily have the right to bust down the doors and do anything, although I will tell you that they will if they see some danger or something going on. Like the person's, they can see the person inside the house, but they're not moving. And they're yelling, they're doing things they call family. They try to get a key and things like that, but nothing's going down. They'll break the door down. I've had that happen personally a couple of times and stuff. So I know they'll do that. But, they had to do it. I mean, when someone's suffering from, a medical emergency or something.
And that would be their factors that would qualify it as an exigent circumstance that
right.
They need to get in to make sure that someone is okay.
Now, what happens though is that when they come and they talk to the guy, they don't question him about his mental stability or anything like that. In fact, they say, hey, he seems square, he seems correct. And he's just telling them, hey, we got in an argument. Nothing's wrong here. I'm not going to kill myself. You got to be kidding, right? And they don't believe him for some reason. They choose not to believe him. So
I don't know, was that they didn't believe him or that they just thought, you know what, they've been arguing, he has guns, we're going to take these guns, and that way that'll keep everyone safe.
Well, now he's proud of his guns. He says he's a responsible gun user. He had no record, no complaints that he, is using them in any improper way. But they use a tactic, and that's my problem. At that particular point, if they felt that the guy had some mental issues or something, they should have called somebody else in, But what they did was tell him, well, come on down to the hospital with us. And if you pass muster there, we'll just, everything will be cool. So they bring him down. And while he's doing that, they go back to the house and talk to the wife and tell her, he told us it was okay to get his guns. And she just lets him take the guns.
Well, because she believes the representation.
Right. The cops came and said that. Now, instead of calling him and finding out and all that kind of stuff. So when he comes back, he learns, oh my God, you took all my guns. And so that's when the community would be, we had to caretake for the community because we felt something was going to go wrong. But even understand,
they couldn't actually articulate any specific facts that would have supported them.
Exactly.
I think had they been able to articulate those facts, such as he had threatened to kill himself or he had threatened that he was going to kill her.
Right.
The community caretaking exception may have applied in that instance.
It may have, only because it, like I said, it really was for dangers left behind. You could see where if there was some sort of gun battle or something going on, lots of weapons, and they didn't clean up the scene. Kids could walk around and find guns and bullets on the ground. I can understand community caretaking, like the vehicles, cars in the middle of the street. You're going to take that car. Cars blocking other people's driveways or something. Now I'm taking care of the community by removing the vehicle. And it's the least form of restraint or, that you can do. I'm not holding anybody. I'm not doing anything to a person. I'm merely moving an object. So here the object is guns I own legally in my house, possibly in my safe.
That's substantially different from a vehicle on the street.
Exactly.
In a public location.
Causing a danger to the public because the name of the community caretaking. So why should it be narrowed to the home of anybody's home? Why? I mean, and that's what the Supreme Court is going to have to answer is, do we narrow the Fourth Amendment? And do we start carving out things like we've seen in Miranda, okay? And with Miranda warnings, and no doesn't necessarily mean no. It's what the court is saying. When you say, you want to talk to me? No. They say that just opens up the conversation for the officer to say, well, what do you mean by no? And so, yeah. How far do we go on this? And
for every rule, there's always an exception. But as I said, I believe that the law allows them where there is a legitimate, articulable concern that someone is going to be a danger to themselves or to someone else, that they could confiscate those firearms, but that there is a proceeding by which the person can get their firearms back. What we're talking about here, though, is the suggestion that law enforcement, without those kind of articulable facts, it sounds like,
right,
if the law enforcement just feels that they should take your guns, that they would be able to then come in your house without a warrant and do that.
And that's what bothers me is we're leaving it up to the cops to determine, whether there's something of danger here. We already know how they feel and how they react to mental illness and people who have mental illness. They almost act like it just doesn't exist. When you don't have to be around someone 24/7 all your life to know that they may be having a mental crisis. You really don't. And so I think they look at it as an act of aggression towards them and not stop to think that possibly this person's having some sort of mental illness going on. So,
but again, in this case, that my understanding is that was not the case.
The people specifically denied it. Yeah.
So he denied it, the wife denied it. Yeah. My understanding is that it wasn't just he denied it, but it turns out they later found out that he had mental health issues. He didn't have
right. Exactly. So that's why, this is going to be, it's kind of wild that it's even opening up. But I bet you it's opening up because of politics. And that, is this some way that we can prevent mass shooters or something like that? Is it some way that we can put a dent in them? Because some people will say this, just get rid of the guns. And then the other side will say, well, guns don't kill people. People kill people. It has to be somebody behind the gun.
And I'm going to agree with that.
I know you
will. Guns are meant to send a projectile downrange, and they are very good at that, but they don't do that on their own. It takes a human to point that gun at another human being and pull that trigger.
Yes, it does. Now, if I can have my utopian society, I would say that, no guns at all mean that nobody will die by gun. But if you had machetes and knives, there'd just be a lot of stabbing going on, probably. So, does it really stop violence in a community? Does it quit it? Does it do anything? And guns are, well, let's think about this. They used to, Canada is always a good example. Canada has so many more guns than we do here. Now, a lot of them long rifles, and things like that, because of the hunting and stuff being very popular, but way more guns than here, but far less gun violence, killing people. So is it the nature of the human?
Well, it can't be. If it was the nature of the human, then you think you would see as much gun violence there as you see here. So,
but you don't. And think about, well, here's the deal. Here's what I'll say is the difference, right? Canadians did not go through the history that America has. You see, with violence with guns. You see, America.
What history specifically do you mean, Lawman?
Well, let me tell you, since the moment they stepped on these shores, they've been murdering, individuals such as indigenous people, anybody who would get in the way, Spanish, right, the French, people who had landed here before. I mean, guns was the way you solved the problem. That morphed into the Wild West. At the same time, all of this is going on. I'm sorry, there's a little slavery happening down there and stuff, and
I don't know if
holding people.
A little slavery.
Of course, I'm being facetious, but just to say that in different parts of the country, even guns were being used while some may use to kill their food and stuff. Others were using to move people away, to eliminate individuals and control over them. Yes. So the history of the United States and the use of the gun and its power, I think is what it's caused a little poison in our brains, and that there's something running through us whereby guns.
By us, you mean Americans?
I would say Americans versus Canadians. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying Canadians are pure and clean and everything, but they don't have the history in terms of creating their nation with the use of violence and guns. So since that's your history, you don't erase your history. You always remember your history. I mean, I like to liken it to, the abused child, the abused person, right? I mean, the abuse doesn't have to go on for the rest of their lives. It doesn't go on, but the memory of it, that it happened, does. And that's where we're at, maybe, is that we are living out this history that's deep within us of using guns for violence.
Well, rather than the history that's within us, do you think it has to do with certain cultural norms in our society? I mean, violence is depicted 24/7 in television shows,
video games,
in movies, in video games, and perhaps that has some impact on the psyche of young people. Because think about it, if you look at the history of video games now, you have a group of young people who those are the only video games that they grew up with.
Yeah.
They didn't grow up with the games that we grew up with, Pac-Man,
Donkey Kong,
yeah.
Asteroids, yeah. Well, but you're right on that too, I mean, we see it everywhere, really.
So it's almost normalized.
Yeah.
I recall seeing, it's a movie with Keanu Reeves, I believe. And I want to say within the first few minutes of that movie, he had killed, 60 people. It was John Wick. I think that's it.
Yeah.
John Wick.
Because he was an assassin.
He was an assassin, but my goodness, did I need to see that many people killed in such a short time period? And children are watching that. Young people are watching that. And it normalizes that kind of violence.
Right. And it's all over. I mean, and I think part of it too is like Grand Theft Auto and the movies. You see people get killed, but then they're back again. I mean, it's almost like there is no death that's going on. It's some sort of resurrection, that's happening. I can see an actor and he gets killed and then I see him again. And as a child, I mean, you process that as, well, I guess he didn't die, or, hey, nothing wrong with that. He died, and the shooter video games, my goodness.
Yeah, I've never played them. I understand what is depicted on them. There's also the
graphic
military,
violence, and military,
where the violence looks
right.
very, very real. But again, as you say, the character has many lives and can be revived to play again.
Right.
Unfortunately for humans, that does not work.
That's right. And so maybe there is some deep within. Well, I know it is. I mean, the United States.
We have another. And I'm unfamiliar with the laws of Canada, so I will have to defer to you. But we have a comment indicating what happens with the people who show up and turn guns in.
Nah, I don't believe so.
And I don't think most people would do that. I mean, no. I think probably conceal it and just own it illegally.
Yeah, and you got to figure where are they carrying these guns to? I mean, are they? And I've never. I mean, I've been there several times. My brother's a citizen. I had my record company there for 20. What? Been going to Canada, or he's been there 28 years or so. So I tell you, you don't. It is not. When you walk the streets of downtown Vancouver, you can even go East Coast and do Ontario. I never feared or wondered whether anybody had weapons or anything like that. And I know, though, in Canada, they use rifles, they use shotguns more because of the wide open spaces and things like that.
I haven't really followed much about, I'm aware that you have a connection to Canada, but I can't really comment much on Canada because I haven't followed their news in terms of, what's going on there or what the laws are there.
I'll have to send a quick text and find out from my expert. But the point is, I think gun use is not so prevalent in their society at such young ages and in our history, in their history to where, compared to here, to where.
So you think the history of the gun in America is what has normalized gun violence?
I think it helps a lot. I really do. Yeah. I mean, Smith and Wesson, Winchester, they were big names. I mean, there wwere times when you had to have them, and who had the most win. I mean, think about the Civil War even, right? Mm-hmm. Where we're using, the balls, muskets and the balls and, the single loaders and things like that. Who could load the fastest was the better soldier.
I guess the question is, do you want to be able to come into your home and take your gun without a warrant,
right?
And without
a rumble, technically,
a specific articulable reason, a rationale for that.
And so therefore, I think Supreme Court is going to say no. I think they're going to say we're not going to expand it that far. It opens the door for so much more to happen.
One of the problems that we always have is dealing with law enforcement and potential dishonesty.
Yeah.
So making a claim about someone that is not true. For example, the representation in the case that we've been talking about, and stating that the man had indicated to them that they could retrieve his firearms when that was not the case.
Right. Now, see, to me, that's just a straight up lie. I mean, so why would we want to? And that's why I'm going, why is this the case? That they get to use.
A lie is so harsh. I like to call it a material misrepresentation.
Which means a lot.
That is exactly.
Okay. So, but why should, it just, I think what pisses me off, I guess, is that now what's the next lie they get to say? What's the next thing, right? Because we already got the lie of, well, he had a gun, well, he had a knife, well, he was threatening us, and he's armed and he's not. We already got that. That's been going on for a little while now. So now it's going to be them deciding you're a gun owner and responsible, but you know what? I don't want you to be anymore.
Well, what do you think about the gun reform, where they want to make more items illegal, more gun items illegal?
I think I'm cool with that.
You are fine with that?
Yeah. Look, I'm going for less bodies on the floor. Okay, that's less bodies on the floor.
But that's not going to give less bodies on the floor, because if someone wants to wreak that kind of havoc, they're going to find a way to do it, whether it's with a firearm, a knife, a pipe bomb. They're going to find a way to do it. The real issue is finding these individuals that have these kind of inclinations and dealing with them before something happens. Now,
impossible though.
Not always impossible, because sometimes people have made comments and said things to their family members.
And on the internet, right?
Yes, that would be an indication that this person is someone who is planning some kind of attack.
True. Now, what if they're lying? What if they're just playing? What if they're just angry and venting?
Well, again, at least some investigation could occur. If your true concern is I want less bodies on the floor, there always has to be a give and take. And so there should, if there is that issue, a genuine concern that has been expressed by friends or family members, there should be some investigation, maybe not necessarily immediately by law enforcement, but to determine whether or not this person is of sound mind.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't disagree with that. I mean, if we could do it, but we tend to take an easy way out, or the quickest and easiest, out, instead of having to really think about something and acting accordingly. I mean, I can remember when I remember representing my sister, who had suffered tragedy, and she had guns, but she was just walking down the street, in like a robe or something, and the police, came in and took her in, and they took her gun.
There is a few comments here from Sheepdog Protector. Red flag laws are bad. Does California have red flag laws? They do, and those are laws whereby it allows employers, co-workers, family members to basically apply for a restraining order to prohibit someone from possessing weapons if they're a potentially dangerous person.
Now, isn't that true for most domestic violence and harassment restraining orders, that you are, even in the time of the accusation, in the beginning?
Yes, but this can occur without there being any criminal charge against.
Well, I'm not talking about criminal charge. I'm talking about the civil restraining orders. They require you to, if you have weapons, to
turn those over. That
is
true, but this does not require you to be under a specific restraining order or have committed a crime, and they can apply for this order,
right,
that would then restrain you from being able to possess guns.
True, and I mean, there'd have to be a hearing. You would think there'd have to be some finding that I'm not stable or something like that.
But if you think about the burden of proof at restraining order hearings, which this is somewhat essentially is, it is an extremely low burden to get a restraining order issued against someone. It can be one act if that act is considered outrageous. And who determines what's outrageous?
Well,
the particular judge.
And whether it's true. I mean, a judge can listen to people and decide.
Yeah.
So if one is,
one just has to be more persuasive. That doesn't mean that they are telling the truth.
You mean the better liar wins?
That is sometimes the case, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There's no halo that shows over a witness's head to say that they're the person that's telling the truth.
True.
Another comment from Sheepdog Protector is that we already have laws saying don't kill people.
Sure.
That is true. We do have laws that say don't commit murder.
Yes. we
and I guess the point of that, we understand entirely the kind
that
of
should
sarcasm.
Be enough. Right. Shouldn't that be enough, basically? We have laws.
Yeah. But again, having a law does not stop the event from happening. If it did, then there would be no crimes, right? It would only be the crimes that we have yet to define.
Right.
Not prevent events from occurring.
And that's similar to the death penalty, which was supposed to, deter people, like the 3 strikes, was supposed to deter people from committing that 3rd strike or committing a murder because you may die.
And what we see more often than not is that it's social circumstances, mental illness issues, that can lead people to commit crimes. And those are not going to be impacted at all by some future punishment, because the person is not doing a cost-benefit analysis at that particular moment and saying, well, if I do this, then the state is going to do this to me. They're not having that kind of thought process at the time that these criminal events are occurring.
And that thought process may occur, but we call it premeditation and deliberation, which kicks a 2nd-degree murder up to a 1st. So, but that thought process of, you know what, I'm going to contemplate killing. I'm going to think about it, and then I'm going to do it.
But that person, the part that I'm saying they're not thinking about is very rarely is someone thinking about the consequences of what's going to happen to them if they get caught. Those thoughts may occur after the crime has occurred, but they're not usually occurring before the person is acting. Sometimes it's in the moment, sometimes it's out of anger.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna have to try this argument, because wouldn't it have to be there for it to be a true premeditation and deliberation that I did?
Not the thought process about the punishment.
Yeah, wouldn't that? I think that a person would have to contemplate. Well, let's see. If I do this, not only am I murdering, but I may get murdered, or I may die because at the hands of the state. And that's a true taking in all the information, contemplating, deliberating, and then acting. So you can't find him guilty of first-degree murder unless you can prove he contemplated and he thought about the consequences specifically and said, oh well, and did it.
Well, that's not the law.
Well,
there is no requirement that the prosecution prove that the prosecution prove that someone contemplated what the consequences would be. Now, if
let me pull out the jury instruction in just a moment.
Please do so. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a factor that can be considered. If you can show by someone's text messages or by their searches that they actually did contemplate it. What I'm saying is it's not a required element of murder that they contemplate what could happen to them if they commit that particular act.
I'm not saying of first degree murder, because murder is second degree.
Yes.
And then you kick it up because of that premeditation.
But premeditation, there's nowhere in premeditation that it requires that they contemplate. That they contemplate the consequences, that they say to themselves, if I kill this person, the state is probably going to kill me.
Let me just pull out something.
Pull it out.
No. I mean, but look, I only bring it up because that is,
premeditation and deliberation is required, but not the specific fact. That premeditation and deliberation, and you know this better than anyone else, can happen in a split second.
Yes, but it should also.
Now, are we talking about what the law is or what the law should be?
No. Let me read a line from, I believe it's 520 of Caretaker. But, meanwhile, talk to someone's the crowd here for a second. Let me just find it.
We have another comment from Moran Tactical. The problem with red flag laws is that there is no sanction for filing a false report. A friend of mine was falsely accused of a crime and was proven to be innocent. That has happened on more than one occasion and to more than one to many of my clients that I've represented over the years. Moran Tactical further states that the friend had to fight to get the accuser charged with the filing of the false report. And then she barely got a slap on the wrist. Sheepdog Protector said, I live 2 blocks away from a Proud Boys meeting place, so I carry at all times.
Okay. All right. Now, CalCrim 521, definition of first degree murder.
And what Mr. Staten is read from is the California, and every state, I believe, has them, a set of criminal jury instructions which are given to the jury for them to use in their deliberations, telling them specifically how to consider the evidence, what the elements of the charged crime consist of, and a variety of other things that are involved in the criminal process. But Mr. Staten is going to read to you from CalCrim number 521.
Now, let's see. I will start here. Deliberation means carefully weighing the considerations for and against a choice and knowing the consequences, deciding to act. An act is done with premeditation if the decision to commit the act is made before the act is done. So deliberation.
So by knowing the consequences, they do not mean specifically, and you know that they don't, because people get convicted all the time that have not thought about the fact that the crime that they committed, or just the crime that they're accused of, because maybe they didn't actually commit it, could result in a death.
Now, but it just says that you contemplated the consequences. One of the consequences would be that the state could kill me.
Where does it say that? Okay. One of the consequences is that the state
I'm just saying,
because I think what they
hold on, let me go back to it. Okay. Where are you at?
Because a consequence could be, I have this bat in my hand. If I swing this bat and hit Lawman in the head, the consequence of that is Lawman's head may bust open. Lawman may suffer may lose consciousness as a result of that.
An assault.
No, that wouldn't be an assault only if I actually struck you with it and you died from it.
But
the consequence.
Would that be first degree murder?
If I said I am that's making that statement, I am going to kill Keith, and then taking that bat and swinging as hard as I can and impacting your head, yes, I believe that they could get a first degree murder conviction.
Okay, let me read that one more time. Watch. Deliberation.
And that deliberation can occur in a split second.
Means carefully weighing the considerations for and against. So that means you take both sides and there's consideration.
We're going to disagree, because I don't think that is requiring that they contemplate the punishment. It is saying the consideration for and against. If I hit Keith in the head with this bat, he may die. If I don't hit him, then I have to walk away and my pride is hurt. That would be a consequence.
Well,
they're not talking about the consequences. I wish that they were, because then we would be able to show that many clients are not thinking about those kinds of consequences.
But it's just saying weigh for and against, which means taking in all of the situations that could occur.
But how could somebody take all of the situations that could occur in a matter of a split second?
That's what the law says it can be done in.
But
Most of the time it's not.
But it can't.
Most of the time it's not.
I'm going to say that it can't.
Then it's second degree murder.
In a split second, you're never going to be able to take in all of those consequences. But we know that people get convicted.
Well, wait a minute now. But the law says that it can.
Is everything that the law says right? At one point in time, the law said you and I were 3/5 of a person.
Well, I'm not saying the law is always right, because there's the pendulum effect, right? It goes left, it goes right sometimes. But I mean, those words, deliberation, happened to me or will happen to me if I murder.
In a split second.
Brains work very quickly.
They do. But how do I do that in a split second?
Because your brain can, in a second, and decide, I'm going to do this no matter what. I might die. Boom.
So has it been your experience that your clients have actually contemplated all the things that could happen to them in the time, even when they've had hours to think about it? Because that's not been my experience. My experience has been people act out of emotion. They act out of anger. There are, of course, some instances where a person has plotted and planned for years
to do something. Right. And therefore,
and in that situation, that person may have actually spent more time doing it. Again, I don't disagree that it certainly would be a factor that could be considered and used against you.
It could. I'm just saying. I mean,
but back to the issue at hand. Yes. What are we going to do? You're fine with them coming and taking your guns. Is that what I hear you saying? That you are with the Biden administration?
Not for the reason in this, not for community caretaking.
But just if they want to pass a law saying, hey, you know what, Mr. Staten, at most you can own a handgun and you can have a magazine, and the magazine better not have more than 5 bullets. You're good with that.
I just get a revolver.
That's still only 6. That's still only 6.
Well,
but you're good with it.
But you know what? I could be. I could be good with it. because
I'm not coming to your house for the revolution.
Well, I won't be at the house. Hopefully, I'll be in Canada. Bro,
and again,
but
we never know when the zombie apocalypse is about to happen, and we need to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
And when the zombies come, I need more than 15 round magazine.
I mean, it'd be nice to have bullets to kill the zombies, but we know a good workout regime with knives, and you can dare off some zombies all you want. Okay. I mean, you get innovative with your weaponry and stuff. But on the real, look, I don't want them coming in for community. I'm against that. Now, if I'm crazy, I mean, I'm really, I've been doing something crazy, questionable, whether my mental status is good, then I think they got to do what they got to do. Give me a hearing. That's all I say. Just give me a hearing, right? My due process rights. Notice opportunity to be heard. And then I'm good with that.
You're good with them coming in without a warrant?
No. I mean, they got to, now, first of all, you better come into my house with a warrant, period. Guns or no guns, come in my house with a warrant.
It's always a slippery slope.
And that's why I say,
you give them an inch,
that's right. And that's why they should not rule in this case in favor of the Biden administration. That's why I'm saying they shouldn't, because it does cause a slippery slope. Make it hard for them to take my weapon.
But at the same time, you're okay with legislation being passed that will take your weapons.
It depends on the legislation and whether it's fair. That's all. If it's fair. I mean, if it's fair across the board, great. But if you take my weapons, but then the Proud Boys and everybody got stashes and shit all over the place.
And that sometimes
I'm like, hey.
And that sometimes is a problem. Law may be fair on its face.
Right.
But then
the effect, right? Exactly.
And so we always have to keep that in mind.
And that's why people become. That's why we're lawyers and stuff.
I mean, you and I are going to be on opposite sides of that one. I am.
I think we're still on the same team, though.
We are always still on the same team. That we are always.
It's just I guess I'm gonna be shooting bows and arrows while she's firing weapons. Well, I don't disagree with that. No,
I'll come say
if God forbid we're facing a danger like that, then obviously I'm gonna want to be packed. I mean, but
in light of what happened at the Capitol, who knows what we're facing? Who knows what we're facing?
Here's my thing on that though, too. Look, I think the Capitol Police should open fire. Okay, I mean.
Well, they didn't because.
No, I mean, but I think, look, that's one of those situations where you got. And then get beat up themselves. I mean, I'm just saying, some rubber bullets, maybe something.
No, because those are
tear gas.
Those are reserved
tear gas.
for those violent,
tear gas.
Black
Lives Matter
protesters.
No, the peaceful one. They're good for the peaceful one. All right.
We can't be using those rubber bullets on the people that are infiltrating the Capitol.
That was some nasty situation. But I mean, if you did not meet that force with force, that was the first mistake. Period. It is. I mean, they have to meet them with force. They meet everything else with force.
They had no intention of doing that. Again, we've seen on the internet how the law enforcement was in place and ready for peaceful protesters. But when people who came clearly not acting peacefully,
fired up by
to our state capitol, I just know that the rest of the world looking at that,
I had to be laughing, but then crying. All right, what does Moran Tactical say?
Moran Tactical is quite chatty today.
We're talking guns. Castle doctrine, stand your ground. All right. Okay, sure. I mean, if I'm in my home, I can protect myself, no doubt. Right?
I don't know about the stand your ground. Almost cursed. You have a right to self-defense, but what we've seen people doing with the stand your ground is creating a false narrative for self-defense that does not exist. And in California, you cannot create the circumstances that then require you to use force against another person and then claim that that is self-defense.
True, but that is different than the stand your ground provision in 505 of the thing. It means you have no duty to retreat.
No,
that's the thing. No duty to retreat. You don't have to run away.
But you don't get to start that.
That's right.
You don't get to start the ish.
Well, sure. I mean,
you don't get to start the
right.
ish. So I don't get to shoot at you first.
And then you come crying when I'm shooting back. That's right.
I say, oh, well,
exactly.
I was acting in self-defense.
Exactly. And that would be imperfect self-defense, you see, that you're using in that situation. If in fact you did shoot me, you see.
That would
and claim, yes, it will. Imperfect self-defense.
No, that's where the person reasonably imperfect is where the person reasonably believes they had the right of self-defense.
And that's it.
But that wouldn't be reasonable. It wouldn't be reasonable for me to think that I had the right of self-defense when I shot at you first. That's not going to.
Well, I wouldn't agree that you shot at me first. That's the whole thing, I guess, is that, but what you're saying is true. I mean, basically, there's a section that says, you don't get to use self-defense if, in fact, you were the one who used force first, the aggressor and things. Yeah, right. But if I wasn't, and somebody's coming at me, I don't have to run, and I can act
to defend yourself
once I feel that my life is in danger. Or someone else's.
And it's supposed to be reasonable.
Yeah.
Although we've seen circumstances where people claim that they were in fear of their lives.
And someone's running from them. Okay, because they're running to get a gun. So I better shoot them now before they get to the car, right? I mean, but those people are usually generally not prosecuted, right?
And even when they are prosecuted, those people are usually not held responsible. But that's another show.
Another show.
That's another show. We are coming to the end of this particular episode. And at the end of each episode, Lawman usually has a piece of
tidbit.
Yeah, tidbit for us. Do you have one for us today?
Well, let's see.
Or an acknowledgement of something.
Well, I'll tell you this. I was extremely sad to hear. Well, it's bothering me that there's a campaign on right now everywhere that we have to tell people, please don't kill Asians and don't attack them and things like that. It's kind of bothering me that we as a society tend to pick groups, and I'm gonna say we, but that who's the new, as they used to say, who's the new nigga, you see? Who's the new one? Because you were the one today, who's gonna be the one tomorrow? And so it just bothers me that legislation and politicians and everybody, we gotta come out and say, please don't do this. And why? Why do it? Because somebody associates COVID with Asia? So,
but who started that? Who started that? Who started saying the China virus? Who started that?
An individual who his heart's not in the right place. His mind was not in the right place. He wants to stir up shit like a bully would on the playground. And that's why it just amazes me how we do get on a bandwagon, and the new victims are these people, the new victims are those people, and we have to come out and ask people not to do something that you would think would be human nature. And so I guess I'm saying, let's all we all got to look in our minds and souls and check ourselves and stuff, and we have to stop violence and things that are unfair, things that are racially based. We have to stop them against everybody. We're gonna live together, or we're gonna fall apart. Period. And this country seems to have been on the edge a lot of times and stuff. And that storming of the castle, so to speak, in Washington, D.C., I guess if you're fair-minded, you had to have a lot of questions. You got to look at that scene and go, okay, wait a minute, what is this all about? And then we learn later what the true behavior of individuals. And I don't want to go to Washington, D.C. I mean, I don't want to be part of that. It's hard to even say you're proud of our nation when things like that happen. And it's ours. It's everybody's.
Well, I am not going to own their misconduct. I realize that they are also American citizens, but as you say, if this country is going to survive, it's going to have to survive with us together as a people.
Right. Unless of course, for another show, we can talk about parceling it up. But that's another show.
That is another show.
Probably a 3-part series. Well, I don't know. Do we have to say goodbye?
I guess we do. I think we do.
Carmen has a song to sing now.
We again thank you for spending an hour of your evening here with us at Courtside with Lawman
and Carmen B.
All right. Thank you very much. And we will see you next week. Same time, same bat channel.
Yes.
We will also, though, be filming very short videos that we will be placing on for those of you who don't have the time to spend the entire hour with us. We're going to address a variety of topics. So please come back to the channel and look for those small video clips. Thank you for spending your evening with us.
Thank you. Have a great evening.